So thank you everyone for attending the RTBkit 2.0 roadmap preview today. We are joined today by Mark Weiss. I am Anastasia Valentine. I head up marketing at Datacratic. Mark Weiss will be our thought leader today. So let me tell you a little bit about him for those who don't already know. You've probably seen him around either just a moment ago or in the RTBkit group. Mark has more than 15 years of experience in a variety of roles in technology. He brings a range of experience in his current role as head of client solutions for Datacratic. And he works with customers to design, implement, and integrate RTB solutions for them based on RTBkit and Datacratic's RTB Optimizer. Previously, he was the VP of Engineering at Magnetic that offers online advertising and managed services, specializing in search retargeting. And before that, he was the Associate Director of Architecture at Wireless Generation. Now, Mark has his master's in computer science, go figure, of course, from New York University and a BA from Columbia University. And you can follow him on Twitter at Mark Weiss and on GitHub at Mark S. Weiss. Oh, sorry, your Twitter is also Mark S. Weiss. So just to recap, Twitter, Mark S. Weiss, and GitHub is the same. So with that, Mark, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thanks so much, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. Thanks for joining us, and we're really excited to see more than 100 people here. So we're really happy that interest is growing in RTBkit. That's fantastic. And befitting all that interest and enthusiasm, we've got some fresh news for you in today's webinar. We're going to be talking about the evolution of the project. The project's gotten a lot of uptake in the last year and a half since we released it, and we've got people all around the world using it, and so we're going to talk about what we see as sort of 2.0, the next phase of RTBkit, and it's, I think, a very exciting opportunity to open up the ecosystem to many, many more participants and really continue the growth and evolution of the project and bring RTB to many more users all around the world, which is the goal of the project. So thanks again. Okay, right. So here's an overview of what we're going to talk about today. We'll just cover the open source project itself a little bit, how you participate in the mechanics of the project, and so on. We'll recap RTBkit state of the world as of today, 1.0, and that will also give new users some context about the scope of what RTBkit gives you, what it covers when you're thinking about your own bidder solution, and we'll give existing users some reminders and context about how things work now, which will help us understand better the evolution to 2.0 and why we're making some of those changes. We'll get into the meat of the talk about what's upcoming in RTBkit 2.0 and what we believe it enables and some of the architecture and design there. We'll talk about how much of that is done so far, and then at the end we'll just conclude with some additional information about RTBkit and community and resources and so on. So a little bit about RTBkit. For those of you who have seen previous talks or looked at the previous decks, apologize. This is a briefer version of some of that same material, again, to give new visitors some context as well. So RTBkit was created by machine learning and digital marketing company Datacratic, where I work. We're based in Montreal. We do a variety of machine learning-based activities, and among them is running RTB systems, and out of that work, we open source this project in early last year. The project adopted Apache-style governance at the start of this year, and we can get a little bit more into that. So right now, we do the CTO of Datacratic is this sort of benevolent dictator. We don't actually expect that will be for life, but right now that's how things work. Although it really is driven much more by the council. So there are counselors and committers. Outside contributors are absolutely welcome, and there have been many of them in the project, and we encourage that. And we are very open to allowing people contributor status through their participation in the mailing lists and submission of patches and so on. It's a standard GitHub workflow. The project's hosted on GitHub. There are contributor guidelines there and also on the RTBkit.org site. And as I said, users can become contributors. We're very open to that. active contributors can become committers, and that's the basic model of how the governance works. So if you're interested in getting started, the best place to start is, again, on the GitHub RTBkit page. There's a Getting Started guide there, some tutorials. There's a fair amount of documentation in the wiki there, which you can see on the table of contents part of that screenshot. Some examples. There's a developer AMI that you can use immediately on Amazon. And we also offer support, and the community also participates in support in a Google group. We do have some dedicated engineers there, and there's also a wide range of participation from others in the community. And again, there's a basic pull request review process if you want to begin contributing to the project. So, I alluded to the success of the project so far. Just some a little bit more context about that. It's really got an uptake all around the world, as you can see, and we've got users in every continent, it looks like, yes, and many countries around the world. We've got active outside committers, which is great. And as an example of that, we just recently had someone reach out on the Google group to suggest an RTBkit meetup in India, and we're working on making that happen. So that's an exciting example of the kind of participation we're seeing globally with this project. So just a little bit now, backing up just a little bit to talk generally about RTBkit and what kind of value it offers you if you're thinking about it for the first time. This slide is meant to show the problem space that you as a system developer are thinking about when you're thinking about an RTB system. So there are sort of three areas of problems that you need to solve. There's general system problems, generic system problems, because bidders need to handle very high throughput with low latency. They're distributed, they need to scale, and so on, and there's hard problems to solve there. But those are generic problems that every bidder needs to solve. Those are just the plumbing of a bidder, basically. So as you can see, those are to the left under the general technical heading. And also at the bottom of the slide, you can see those are that's the area of problems where RTBkit strives to provide a complete solution. The idea being we should just solve the general problems for everyone to enable them to have an RTB system of their own. As you move to the right, you have the problems of selection and value, which in an RTB context mean basically, should I show this ad to this user? Which ad should I show to this user, and how much should I bid? Of course, that's the ultimate question bidders are answering, 50 or 100,000 times a second, whatever it may be, is how much should I pay? So as you can see, moving to the right, RTBkit provides essentially frameworks for answering those questions, and so a fair amount of sample implementation, so you have a working system. But where those questions become more specific to your business, there's more room for you to provide those specific implementations yourself. And as we'll see in 2.0, the major goal of 2.0 is to make all of that easier, something that you can do in any language, and something that it can be hosted in such a way that outside participants can participate in a marketplace around all of those solutions in the part of an RTB system where where the implementation is adding specific value and really adding value, and it's not just the plumbing. So a little bit more background on RTBkit then in terms of that philosophy and how it fits into the larger marketplace of possible solutions. When you're looking at building a bidder, there's at a high level 4 choices. You can basically forego having your own bidder and just work with an exchange or DSP and have your ad ops people set up campaigns in a UI and all of that. The problem that companies run into there is that that's a lot of manual work. It's hard to scale, and the targeting is very crude because you're essentially working with a segment model for targeting. So it's easy to get started, hard to kind of get past a certain ceiling. The next set of options are around hosted options. Here you're going to have more control over strategy, bidding strategy in the data, but still not at all full control. You're still sort of working within the confines of the product features and probably the UI of the system you're working with. That's that's a little harder to get involved with. Certainly, you're going to have to do more integration and implementation yourself, and you're going to, you get back some control. So kind of the next step, as we see the market, is RTBkit, where you get a great deal of control, the ability to customize, the full ability to use your data and understand the impact of your data. And in return, you have to do more work yourself. And as we'll see, RTBkit 2.0 is attempting to address that too by making some of that implementation more flexible and a little easier to get started with. Finally, if you want full control of the whole system, you can build everything from scratch. And that's where we really see RTBkit providing a lot of value, because as we just discussed, a whole set of concerns here are system concerns that are generic to any bidder, and RTBkit's already solved them, and is providing this evolving framework that gives you a great deal of flexibility. So, you really have to ask yourself, do you want to build everything from scratch? And in return, you would know the system top to bottom. It would be your system, and that would be the advantage you would have there. Okay, so just briefly getting into RTBkit as it stands today, and we'll see also how this leads to the evolution to 2.0. So at a high level, RTBkit architecture is divided into these various services that are talking to each other. Some of that communication today is HTTP, some of that is 0MQ. The 2.0 model is to have essentially all of that communication move to HTTP. We can see here the list of these components, which we'll drill into most of them as we move forward in the next few slides. So the bidder core includes these core services, which we just saw listed: the router, the banker. So the router is kind of the controller of all the bid traffic through the system. The banker's keeping track of banking in a reliable way. There's monitoring. Post-auction service here is what matches previous bids to incoming wins and clicks and conversions. The ad server connector is the component that receives those event messages of wins, clicks, and conversions coming back in. And agent configuration is what lets the router know what bidding agents are available in the system, and gives it the ability to route bids to them. So what are the advantages of the core? You get a core bidder, as I mentioned, so you're getting the plumbing basically for free, and a high-performance implementation of all that you don't have to deal with yourself. You're getting multi-data center support. You're getting a reliable banker, which in a system that's spending money this quickly is obviously very, very important and risky to implement yourself. It guarantees response time. You're getting high-performance implementations of kind of some of the key computational challenges here, which are parsing the incoming bid requests, applying filtering, and doing all that at thousands of QPS scale throughput. And you're getting the flexibility, as we'll see, to add your own logic. That's something we already discussed. In addition, a major piece of the value you get with RTBkit is integration with multiple exchanges and an open architecture to add additional exchange connectors. So it ships right now with a bunch of exchange connectors, and certainly many users out there we know of have implemented their own, and of course we encourage sharing that back. This should say OpenRTB 2.2 compatible, which is just about the case and will be certainly in the next couple months, and that is the goal of RTBkit 2.0 as well. So just a little bit more on how things work in the internals of RTBkit. This is showing you the data flow through the system. You can see the data flow from the 3 external data sources, and you can see the data flow through the major components of the system. Bids are coming in from the exchange, passing through the exchange connector, which parses the bid request, passed to the router, which is sending that through filtering, through the augmenter component, which becomes the data component in RTBkit 2.0. The augmenter can add fields to the bid request based on external data, so that's where you might bring in your audience data. Again, passing through additional filters, reaching the bidding agent whose job is to bid on the bid request. And we can see the second data flow, and we can actually see the arrows coming back to the left now would be the bid responses coming back to the connector and then back to the exchange. We also see the other external data flows into the system from your ad server or wherever you're getting conversions, coming into the ad server connector component, and then to the matching that happens in the post-auction service. So this is another view of this, sort of trying to color code the different types of activity happening in the system and the different data flows. We see that we're processing bid requests. We're making updates to the bank based on bids outgoing, so that's spend that's in flight. And then when wins come back and are matched, we can debit the accounts that are in the banker for various campaigns. We're matching events, as we mentioned, the wins, clicks, and conversions coming into the post-auction service. There's also a data flow from there to bidding agents, because they certainly want to know about those events if they're doing any kind of optimization or computation based on whether the bids have been effective or not. And the purple data flow, as we mentioned, that's filtering of bid requests as they come in, where the router's walking through these steps to determine which agents need to see which bids. So just a little bit more on the banker, because it's a key piece of the value that you get in RTBkit. It's a single source of truth for your budget, and it's the system that's authorizing the spending. There's a fair amount of attention paid to the design of the banker for it to be reliable, to persist state in a way where there can be very little loss, and to be resilient in the face of poor network conditions and so on. There's also some nice support for doing currency there, with classes that wrap that logic for you, so you don't have to make those mistakes on your own. In addition, it's worth noting that the way the banking's set up is flexible and lets you set up hierarchies in a flexible way based on however you organize your campaigns. We see different customers with different needs, around campaigns, campaign groups, line items, whatever you call them, and how you organize the spend. You're able to set that up through hierarchical sets of accounts in the banker. In addition, there's a lot of instrumentation in RTBkit that logs out to Carbon, and you can get a front end on all of that using Graphite, and that gives you a lot of insight into what's happening in the system as it's running. And as many in the audience probably know from having launched and run bidders in production, understanding the behavior of your system as it's running and doing troubleshooting and all that are very obviously important parts of keeping these challenging systems running. A couple more things to cover to sort of understand the scope of RTBkit 1.0 and what you're getting there. There's a lot of canned filters already available for you there, and again, they're implemented to run very quickly. And the order that they execute in, as it shows here, happens in a way that's, again, meant to optimize performance. So the broad ones run first, and the expensive ones are only run later on the smallest set of remaining data that's there. And the last thing to mention is the augmenter. This is a component right now in 1.0 that is used to allow you to bring in your own data. It's a very nice flexible system because every bid request passes through here, and you have the opportunity to implement something that can do an outside lookup on data and add fields into the bid request or apply filtering based on your own data. So it's a great way to do dynamic filtering. It's a great way to add in data that then your bidding agent or the piece that's going to actually compute a bid, a bid price can take into account, for example, your audience data. It's also implemented in a way that won't cause timeouts back to the exchange and so on. And RTBkit right now ships with an implementation of this that connects to Redis. Here's an example of implementing your own bidding agent. There's a fair amount of detail here. This holds for today, the C++ or JavaScript, as we'll see in a moment. This is opening up in 2.0. But the idea is you get interfaces here that allow you, if you want to implement your own bidding agents with configurable logic around how much you want to bid and how much you charge sort of your bank for each win, and so on. Great. So that's kind of an overview of RTBkit 1.0, the scope of the project, the kind of philosophy of the project in terms of where it attempts to fit in the market, and what it attempts to give you when you're building your RTB solution. And now let's get into 2.0 and the evolution of the project. So, pardon the somewhat cheesy photo there. The big story in RTBkit 2.0 or plugins And as we'll see, there are multiple reasons for this. And it really is the key thing to understand in the evolution of the architecture of the project, and really even perhaps the model of, to some extent, of how we all participate in using the project in the market. So why plugins? The first reason really is that our goal with the project is to support an evolving ecosystem where many participants can add value to RTBkit by providing implementations of the different kinds of services you need in a bidder. Secondarily, this really opens up the ability to implement things in a more flexible way using the language of your choice, and perhaps leveraging existing assets you have or technical resources you have more comfortable in one or another environment, and all of that, because all of the communication, as we'll see, happens through HTTP, and that really just opens things up. So at a high level, the design supports this goal of a plugin-based architecture. So plugins are going to be identified by URL, they can be versioned, they can support multiple RTBkit versions, and they can, as we'll see in a moment, live in a public way where multiple different RTBkits can speak to them, which of course enables the ability to have commercial plugins from third parties that you can use in your system. And of course, there'll be the necessary authentication and security. And again, there'll be metering and so on to support billing, again with the idea of supporting a marketplace of plugins and participants. So a little bit more on this ecosystem. Again, it's a major goal, and the idea is that RTBkit users can leverage these third-party plugins. And this is a little redundant, I apologize, but just again going over the idea of public plugins. The public plugins would be plugins that a vendor would make available to other RTBkit users, not just use internally on their own system. So these, of course, need to be multi-tenant. They need to be multi-location, which means that you can have what looks like one logical plugin endpoint living in multiple different data centers. Again, they need to support authentication and security, metering, and support multiple RTBkit versions so that different RTBkit users can make use of your public plugin. So, okay, so we have this idea of supporting public plugins. What are some of the use cases? Really, they fall into if we recall the early slide about the RTBkit services and what was in core and what was in plugins, we can see that from the beginning of RTBkit, we had this notion of plugins, and we're really evolving that. And these use cases really fall into that area of the services around the core where you're adding specific business value and you need custom business logic, and that those are really the opportunities for plugins to add value to multiple different users. So, some possible use cases might be campaign management and bidding plugins, custom bidding logic, bid optimization, the integration of first-party data through data plugins, or of course, other data, third-party data as well. A variation on an optimization plugin might be sort of just a price modifier plugin, still somewhat of the same idea where it's returning back to you a factor on the bid price you want to pay based on computation and perhaps outside data. Custom attribution plugins for more complex conversion scenarios, potentially. And again, this is something I meant to update here. The analytics plugin, as we envision it, will support both real-time and offline analytics, but the basic idea is a standard way to log events so that they can be used by analytics and BI systems in various contexts. And potentially also real-time audience modeling, where you might be integrating in outside models and doing lookups against them in real time. And these are just examples of things that we can envision being valuable in the marketplace. It's open to the participants really to discover what's going to take hold. So we talked about public plugins. The same architecture holds for private plugins. So the idea is that within your own RTBkit, you can also take advantage of this flexible architecture and implement plugins there. So there are two potential deployment strategies here. The simplest one for something of reasonable load is to have both the configuration and the plugin API available on one endpoint, handled by one web server. We'll get into these configuration and plugin APIs in just a moment. And then, if you need load balancing, you have a slightly more complex deployment, but it's logically the same idea. And again, the idea here is this design, this architecture of plugins is consistent. It gives you a lot of flexibility internally to drop in different implementations or split how you handle bid requests in various ways, and also have a mix of things you handle internally with your own plugins and things you might use public plugins for and handle externally. So this is the architecture of a public plugin model. And again, we mentioned that users can make plugins available publicly to other users. So what we see here is in the middle, there's this notion of a public configuration API that RTBkit instances can pull. And that gives them, it's a configuration and discovery mechanism, really. It gives RTBkit instances the ability to discover available public plugins. One key aspect of this is that this will be zone aware, geographically aware, so that it will prefer to recommend to publish, you could say, available plugin endpoints back to the RTBkit instance that are in its own zone. And this discovery and configuration mechanism is also obviously a key component of supporting a public marketplace. There needs to be some means of discovering what plugins are available and also connecting to plugins from third parties. So drilling into the architecture of the plugin model a little bit more, again, as we mentioned, all extension points outside of the core are redefined as being passive HTTP plugins. So you can see we're sort of evolving in RTBkit from a model of implementing subclassing, in an OO model, sort of subclassing classes that are available to you to customize the behavior of your system, to more of a services model where you're going to connect various plugins together to your core and give you more flexibility. The other obvious evolution here is that you can implement plugins in any language that speaks HTTP, which is really anything. The other key components of this are sort of things we've already talked about. Standard approaches to configuring plugins, finding them, deployment we'll get into a little later, and we'll also get into a little more detail on security and compatibility. All those need to have standard ways of managing them so everything works with everything else when you connect it together. We mentioned that there'll be public and private plugins, and in addition, RTBkit core itself is going to evolve, as we'll see when we talk about the roadmap, to be compatible with the plugin model. A little bit more detail we saw in the when we talked about private plugins, the two plugin endpoints. So every plugin will support a configuration endpoint and another endpoint where it's actually doing the work, the plugin work. The configuration endpoint lets the core discover the plugin and understand what it needs to send the plugin and understand what the plugin is going to give back to it. And it also helps handle the security. So essentially, the core can tell the plugin through the configuration endpoint, these are the IPs I'm coming in on. The plugin can arrange for the right authentication to be passed from the core. So it also supports the security model. So plugins will expose various APIs and be configured in various ways. So configuration plugins essentially let RTBkit instances know whether they're alive or not, which also supports routing to alternatives and so on. Bidder plugins, so the bidder itself is actually going to be conceived of as more of a plugin in 2.0, and the idea is to take this component that can receive bid requests and send back responses and make it something that you can send to an endpoint. This is something that's already available in an earlier form in current RTBkit through the HTTP bidder interface and the multi-bidder interface, and we're just extending that model to a full generic plugin model. the bidders, bidder plugins can understand whether they're interested in it or not through the addition of bid data in the EXT field, as we see here, and that's going to be part of the spec of the bidder plugins. We also envision analytics plugins receiving a stream of data, so we expect that to be, I think that's OpenRTB 2.2. Those should be the, no, actually, sorry. So that they're actually receiving event data. I apologize for that. So the idea there is you're recording typically wins, clicks, and conversions, perhaps other events that you're sending to your, the ad server connector. And you want to do analytics on those potentially in real time through lookups in a data plugin, for example, or for offline analytics and reporting. So the basic idea is you're sending some ID identifying the event, the type of the event, and probably a timestamp as well. And data plugins you could think of as kind of this fully HTTP plugin implementation of the way augmenters work now. So plugins, besides exposing an API, also take configuration and also send configuration. So they tell the core, this is the kind of data I'm going to be sending back to you. So we can see that they'll identify themselves through some unique ID, potentially through some kind of versioning system, the URL where they're available, how often you can poll them to get new configuration. And then different kinds of plugins send different kinds of information back. So bidders can tell the core whether they're doing banking on their own, what filtering they're doing, whether they're doing data lookups. Banking plugins can be configured to handle budget and bid rate. And as we mentioned, the analytics plugins can be configured as to what kinds of data they're handling, what types of events they're handling. Another aspect of this architecture is full multi-data center support for the plugins. So as we mentioned earlier through the public plugin discovery process, RTBkit instances are going to know their location and are going to be sort of region aware, and the system in both directions is going to strive to have RTBkit instances connected to plugins in the same geo, in the same location or locale, as you can think of it. So that's the basic idea there, and there'll also be a sort of a standard public directory as part of the RTBkit project of locations with standard naming and so on. That will facilitate that directory process and that discovery process by region. And of course, timeouts need to be handled as well. So just a couple more topics here in terms of supporting the plugins and how they're going to work. So of course, if we're talking about public internet traffic and multiple parties talking to each other and sharing plugins and so on, security is an issue. So the basic model is that calls to the configuration endpoint are secure, and that those enable signed requests to the sort of do work endpoint of each plugin, which can happen over straight HTTP for better performance. And the core will periodically call configuration, the plugin configuration endpoints to tell it, hey, I'm calling from these IPs, so you can allow traffic only from those. And we definitely recommend that plugins are implemented in some kind of reverse proxy model, so that that level where they're routing out to servers behind the plugin can handle security and minimize attack surface if there are malicious attacks. So another thing that has to happen to facilitate a plugin, wide use of plugins and flexible use of plugins and many participants is to handle things like packaging and compatibility. So RTBkit 2.0 will include test suites to ensure that plugins are compatible with the RTBkit 2.0 core, as well as that you can test that adding a new plugin to your system doesn't break the operation of your overall system. all plugins will speak OpenRTBkit 2.0, OpenRTB 2.2. There'll be multiple packaging options, including Docker and binary distributions. And we plan for plugins to be backwards compatible. The idea is that there'll be interfaces in RTBkit 1.0, at least through the release of 2.0, that wrap the ability to talk to the plugins. So you can have the traditional interaction with services in the core, or you can have that communication happen over interfaces that support speaking to the plugin APIs. So one more thing to note is that the core itself is going to evolve as well. This is sort of a formalization of the way a lot of folks are working with RTBkit now, where some of the services are more of in a control mode and have lower scaling requirements and need to be present per data center. And then some services, have high volume of traffic going through them and need more scaling. So the idea is to take those groups of services and break them more formally into control blocks and worker blocks, where the control block is going to be prepackaged and something you can install in the data center and have its own API, and the worker block as well is going to be something prepackaged, and you can scale that horizontally. So those are going to be shared nothing blocks that you can add to your system in each location and as you need to scale. So that's everything we wanted to cover about 2.0. I'm sure many of you have questions at this point. Just to wrap up here, we'll talk a little about where we are in the roadmap of all this. Obviously, we've laid out a lot of ambitious goals for evolving the project, and development is underway. As I mentioned earlier, the HTTP bidder interface release and multi-bidder interface release were the first steps in this direction, and those have been out for several months. Those will evolve to fully support the 2.0 API in the coming months. In addition, we at Datacratic expect to release first open source code around these 2.0 APIs later this year. And just to highlight that we're no longer tied to C++ for implementation of RTBkit components, we're writing these in Go. There'll also be some updates to RTBkit to maintain compatibility with these new APIs as they come out. Next on the roadmap for early next year, we envision data and logger APIs. So that's essentially going to support the evolution of augmenters into plugins and the evolution of custom logging and analytics plugins. So that's where we are with the roadmap and the progress of the project. And if you're new to RTBkit, obviously we're happy you're here today. Here are some links to additional resources, and we'll make sure we publish this deck and get links out to folks who are here today, so you'll be able to get to these links. This is an announcement that Rubicon Project, one of our partners on RTBkit, is building their open DSP platform around RTBkit. If you're interested in that, you can reach out to them. And this is just a little about us as a company. Again, we'll publish the deck and you can get more of this information. We mentioned the meetup that we received outreach from folks in India to do a meetup there. We love that. If you're interested in a meetup in your area, please reach out on the group and someone will work with you on that. And lastly, in keeping with the 2.0 model of plugin marketplace, we've recently launched a marketplace for RTBkit services. You can find out more about that as well. Again, we'll make the deck available to everyone, or just Google for that. And we encourage participation there. So that's it. Thanks everyone if you made it this far. And we're going to open up the floor now to questions.
Cool. Now I'll be facilitating the questions, Mark. Just a couple of notes on the last two slides. So if you do want to set up a meetup in your location, we did a couple of really great ones, actually quite a few this year in London, New York City, and we're looking to bring the RTBkit meetup to you. So definitely reach out and let us know if you want to host, and we will help you promote and put that event together. And on the RTBkit marketplace front, essentially this is a really great place where service providers can promote their expertise. And we know we have some really great and talented people and developers in the forums. And especially if you have an RTBkit related project that you want people to bid on. It's not a place where money exchanges hands, but it is a place where we can connect really great resources to great projects. So that goes to beta as of next week. So we'll make sure that we share all the information with you. So a note on the questions, we did get some questions using the question feature. So I just want to review how you can send us questions right now so we can answer you live. You can go ahead and raise your hand and your virtual hand. You could do that using the GoToWebinar control panel. And that will enable me to open your line and you can ask your question live to Mark. And we also have the ability to take your questions using the question feature. Just type them in and send it our way. If you don't want to ask live, and it will go in the queue and we'll answer your questions. So go ahead and send them on in or raise your virtual hand. And Mark, we'll get to the first question if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay, the question here is, I've got a demo server set up with RTBkit, but I haven't customized any of the code yet. Now that RTBkit 2.0 is in the picture, would you recommend waiting for RTBkit 2.0 to be released before customizing, or is it easy to carry forward any changes?
Well, I wouldn't recommend waiting. Off the top of my head, I wouldn't recommend waiting only because that's having your business be dependent on the time frame of all of these changes, and there's certainly going to be something that happens over a period of time. It's a little hard to answer perfectly without knowing the details of the customization that the person needs. But I mean, I think the general idea is that we want RTBkit to be an evolution where we maintain compatibility with 1.0, and I think that's key. So the basic answer is we're striving very hard to maintain that compatibility and have the 1.0 RTBkit be able to speak to both 1.0 versions of the what you can think of as the services around the core, or 2.0 plugins, and have that happen through dependency injection and configuration. So you're not locking yourself in by starting today and aggressively pushing your system forward as fast as you can. That's probably what you want to do, and then you can think about replacing various services later with plugin implementations as you see the need. But you don't want to hold your business up now, probably, unless you have a really long time frame on this, and that's really your goal.
The next question is, what is the timeline for rolling out 2.0?
So we got into that a little bit. As far as we have transparency right now, we see releases this quarter and next covering sort of a more complete and 2.0 compatible version of being able to route bid requests to HTTP bidding agents, and in addition, logging and data plugin releases, and the evolution of the core to adapt to those. So that's a lot. That really covers a lot of the core of where you're going to have the most need to customize your system, because that's going to give you now the ability to have your own implementation of bidding logic and potentially optimization, your own custom logging to support any reporting that you want to add and analytics you want to add outside of that, and your own ability to add in your own data and have that influence both filtering and your bid strategy. So that's why we're focusing on those areas. First, we believe those areas are the most ripe for customization by users, and therefore potentially hold the most interest to have lots of participants participate and add value, particularly probably around the areas of the analytics plugins and data plugins.
Great. Next one is, how long do you plan to continue to support RTBkit 1.0?
So
or 1.2?
That's a great question that I don't think we have an answer at the ready for at this time. What we can say for sure right now is that for the foreseeable future, through the first set of 2.0 releases, we absolutely want things to be compatible, going forward compatible. So I don't think there's a time frame yet for 1.0 even being deprecated, which is a partial answer.
Yeah, and we'll certainly, as soon as we have that information, we will make sure that everyone knows well in advance so that you can plan accordingly. So no worries there. You say that you've already built some components of RTBkit 2.0. Is anyone running that code in production?
So I do think we're running some of those components internally, but I don't know of anyone outside of Datacratic running any of that in production.
Okay, the next question is, does RTBkit 2.0 allow me to put more than one campaign in an agent?
So I don't believe the routing logic is significantly different as it is in 1.0.
Okay.
The current implementation of the bidder interface is essentially the same routing logic, but with sort of an HTTP transport mechanism. So I believe the answer at this point is no.
Okay, a lot of backward compatibility questions coming in. The next one is, will this mean that my current RTBkit installation is not compatible with 2.0, and what work will I need to do to use it? And I know you covered a little bit of this, Mark.
Sure. No, and I mean, it's fine even to so this, it's great if the people are asking this question, it means they're concerned, and as well they should be, so that's fine. Again, it does not mean that the goal is to have 1.0 be able to speak to either 1.0 versions of services or 2.0 versions of services, and to have you as the manager of your system be able to inject that behavior through dependency injection and configuration so that you can, for example, decide to speak to a traditional C++ bidding agents or HTTP bidding agents, for example.
Great. Now, just a reminder, we have quite a few questions in the queue, so we do want to make sure that we get to everyone. Just go ahead and raise your virtual hand to ask your question live, or send your question in, just type it in using the question feature, and we will be answering your question shortly. The next one is Bright Role Exchange supported in RTBkit?
So I don't know of an Exchange connector for them that's part of the public project right now. No. It's something, obviously, someone could implement, and we would, of course, welcome that contribution back to the project.
Great. Okay, the question is, could you describe the difference between the augmenter and data plugin? Does RTBkit 1.0 augmenter have performance or architecture disadvantages that are being solved?
I don't think it's about performance or architecture disadvantages. In fact, 1.0, it's a more coupled model that attempts probably to control performance more because there's a thread pool implementation there in the 1.0 implementation of augmenters and a guaranteed timeouts and so on. The 2.0 model is much more not about performance. It's really about opening up the ability to integrate third-party data into the bid stream to a plugin ecosystem, because we believe that's an area where there'll be lots of interest from many parties, both in the buying of that data and selling of that data to take advantage of that data and integrate it in with bidders so that it can be used, to drive performance and drive bidding strategy and so on, and drive optimization.
Great. Next question is using HTTP everywhere mean that it's trading efficiency for simplicity? Will the core components use HTTP or keep ZMQ?
So the goal is eventually to have, I believe the goal is eventually to have everything off of ZMQ. I mean, definitely what's been outlined for 2.0 so far was moving from ZMQ to HTTP, and I think one way to answer that is that yes, it is emphasizing simplicity, but we've never found local network traffic between these components over HTTP to be a latency issue at all, and so the advantages of moving to a simpler protocol with really universal support across languages and so on, outweigh those concerns if even those are concerns.
Okay, the next question is, and this will mean a lot more to you than will me, Mark. When can I use protobufs? They make my code way faster.
Sure. I mean, that's come up, and in fact, sort of internal discussions around later iterations to sort of 2.x versus 2.0. We've discussed support for protobuf versus JSON or other transports. Right, it's something that's on the radar, but I can't commit to any kind of time frame. We would, of course, welcome third-party contributions, and we understand the value of it. We understand its use, for example, in Google services, and it's something that we're thinking about.
Excellent. Now we've got two more questions in the queue, so if you do have any questions, go ahead and send them in to us. The next question is, will RTBkit 1.0 continue to be improved while RTBkit 2.0 is being developed?
Right. So I think more of the focus in 1.0 will be on making sure it's compatible with 2.0 and continuing to fix any issues that come up. I think we are going to de-emphasize larger scale efforts to refactor 1.0 or add new features to 1.0 and focus on the evolution of 2.0.
Great. Okay, last question, but if you do come in with a question after this one, no worries, we will get to you shortly. The question is, and it may have been answered in one of the previous ones, why HTTP instead of 0MQ in RTBkit 2.0?
So the main reason is that it's very standard, it's supported everywhere, it's simpler to work with. It can be load balanced through standard load balancing mechanisms. Endpoints can be any standard HTTP server, and those are the main reasons. For a model of plug-in architecture with many participants and a really explicit goal of driving participation in a plug-in ecosystem by many participants, HTTP is far and away the best choice, because any technology choice any participant makes is going to support HTTP.
Great. So just want to issue a last call for questions. Go ahead and send your question in now, just through the question mechanism or by raising your virtual hand. We just got another one in, and that is, will RTBkit 2.0 support multiple Linux distributions?
I don't think that's on the short-term roadmap right now. Definitely, we want to support the most recent Ubuntu, but we definitely welcome we welcome contributions if people can package it up for other languages. That comes up from time to time on the list. I have seen some people on the list have success with other versions of Linux. It's not something internally we're planning to support in the short term, though.
Okay, Mark, I think that's the end of our questions. I don't see any more in the queue, and I think we've addressed all of them that came in. So, sorry, everyone says, hey, wait a second, what about me? We've got two more. I knew that would happen. I totally knew that would happen. That's great. Okay, question is, how to evaluate buying servers or renting cloud servers?
That's a very broad question. I think without having a lot more detail about many aspects of the system under consideration, it's hard to answer, but I can broadly and sort of briefly outline some of the factors you want to consider. So definitely you want to consider how much monthly spend you're going to be spending. If you can guess at some kind of CPM you're going to be paying, you can then back into a number for essentially how many wins you need to win in a month. If you make assumptions about what percentage of the bids you see you're going to win, which something on order of 1% is probably valid. Depends very much on the optimization strategy you're going to do and how often you're going to bid versus the traffic you see. But you want to look at that. So you want to say, well, how many bids do I need to bid on to win the number of impressions I need to win, and then what does that translate in terms of how many incoming bid requests I need. So now you can model sort of how much throughput you need coming into the front of your RTB kit, how many bids are going to pass through to reach bidding agents, and then you also can model for your ad server connector and your logging of events, how many events you see coming back. Those are key numbers. In addition, depending on pretty heavily on how you're going to organize your bidding logic and so on, you want to look at how many simultaneous campaigns are you going to run, how many of them do you think are probably going to be eligible to bid on any given bid, and what kinds of resources they're going to need, the bidding agent is going to need in terms of CPU and memory, are typical constraints there. You're looking at sort of running data in memory as you're computing bid value, and you're doing, obviously doing some computation as well. So those are kind of all things you need to look at. And the idea is you want to model those out with numbers and get to some notion of the size of hosts you need and the capacity of the hosts you need. Not obviously, this is very brief, and this is sort of a cursory treatment of this subject. But and beyond that, the question of cloud versus your own hosted, so like your own co-located facility, for example, with your own servers, that's going to depend on the latency requirements you're looking at. We certainly have, and we know of many customers that run entirely in the cloud. We also have some of our some installations in co-located servers. It depends on, again, the latency you need to support. Latencies for mobile tend to be longer than for desktop, and even so, often for desktop, you can do just fine in the cloud. But then you may have partners you're working with very strict requirements, or you may have partners who can offer you co-located space, even in the same rack and so on. And then obviously there can be advantages because there's a very, very low latency then. Those are just all things you need to consider. Other considerations are obviously projecting costs. So if you're looking at how much data you're persisting in the cloud, how much the bytes in and out, and what that's going to cost you for network transfer, you can model that versus what it would cost you to buy your servers and look at the cost over however many years and so on, and rent space in a facility and so on. It's a hard question to answer specifically because it's a very general question, but those are some of the things you want to consider when attacking that problem.
And Mark, I feel a blog post coming on, don't you?
Sure.
Next question is, will RTBkit 2.0 be provided as an Amazon AMI?
It's an interesting question. This just recently came up that the AMI currently provided is really most suitable just for development because it doesn't, for example, include more recent support for better networking options in Amazon. So I think upgrading the AMIs is something that we will look at in the next, sort of same time frame as we talked about 2.0 development, and I expect that we'll release upgraded AMIs at some point as well to support these changes. But again, I don't have an exact date.
Okay, just a question was, will the slides be shared? And absolutely, we're going to be putting them up on SlideShare as well as a copy of the video, the recorded webinar, up on our YouTube channel. So we'll send you all links for that as well. Next question, Mark, is will you continue to use carbon graphite by default, or will the new plugins make this change?
So as far as I know right now, there aren't plans to change off of carbon and graphite.
Okay. Will 2.0 be easier to install and run?
I hope so. I think the goal is certainly to have a smaller core that's a little bit easier to work with, and if the discovery and packaging aspects that were outlined in the goals for 2.0, if those are all achieved, particularly, Docker distributions, binary distributions, the ability to deploy HTTP plugins and discover them dynamically, those things have the potential to simplify deployment and also provide folks with more flexibility as well.
This one is talking about reporting. So reporting is quite important to us. Can we link a different win or lose graph?
Well, if I understand the question, the reporting of wins is something that's going to happen outside of RTBkit core. Typically, what you're doing is logging those events and having an outside system consume them and make them available to a reporting system. So in that case, yes, you can use anything you want to visualize that data. We internally certainly use a couple different systems to do so. And if that was not quite an understanding of the question, please ask the questioner to follow up, and I'm happy to try to clarify.
Okay, just a recap, when will 2.0 be available?
So again, the first pieces of it are in their sort of earliest forms are out now in terms of the bidder interface and the multi-bidder interface. We expect releases this quarter that continue focusing on bringing the bidder interface into line with the 2.0 specs and making some changes to the core to be compatible with that. We expect the first open source release of plugin implementations or partial implementations to come out this quarter, and the goal by the end of next quarter is to have support for bidder plugins, data plugins, and analytics plugins.
Great. Next question is, why have you decided to use Go?
Well, I'm not the person who made that decision, so I'm not 100% sure, but basically we evaluated multiple choices, we measured performance of Go versus C++, and it was apparently it performed very well enough that we're banking on it in terms of the first implementations of the plugins we're putting out. Other reasons are it's relatively familiar to folks coming from a systems background and a C++ background. It's got excellent tool support. It's got strong community support and indirect but still quite strong vendor support from Google, which is where the language came from. It's getting traction definitely as sort of the next systems language, arguably along with maybe Rust, but certainly on par or ahead of any other current contenders in that space of being the next more modern systems language. So I think those are all reasons why it's a good choice. But again, we certainly tested it from a performance point of view and prototype things internally, and both made sure we thought we could work with it, that it would be nice to work with, and that it would perform well. I think one additional reason relative to C++ is it's just the number of lines of code are much lower, and an additional reason that it's a nice choice for this kind of system is it has very nice primitives for concurrency relative to how you implement that in C++. So those are all reasons why it's potentially a good choice. Obviously, it's early and it hasn't been out in production at scale with a lot of users, so it remains to be seen how well it works, but it's looking like a good choice right now.
Great. Just a reminder that we've only got 3 questions in the queue, so if you do want to get some in, go ahead and send them in through the questions feature or raise your virtual hand. The next one is, will there be better documentation with RTBkit 2.0?
I think that there will be additional documentation with 2.0 for sure, and our goal is always to keep improving the wiki on GitHub, and we do make improvements to it. I understand that the documentation can always improve, and that's always something that's evolving. So I think my answer is we intend to have improve the documentation as we add the 2.0 features.
Will RTBkit 2.0 be available for OpenRTB 2.2?
Yeah. So the intention is that all that OpenRTB 2.2 is the protocol for as much of the communication as possible in RTBkit 2.0, and that includes things like the data plugins receiving full OpenRTB 2.2 and returning that as well with any additional fields added into ext fields.
Next question is, a lot of people are using an agent gateway for easily launching or stopping agents. Have you decided to add that by default in 2.0?
So that's not something that's on the roadmap right now. We definitely understand that managing agents is an area where there's a lot of discussion.
Great. Okay, and I think that's the last question. We're just going to make sure, because last time we said it was the last question, a whole bunch poured in. But you can always send your questions in through the RTBkit forum on Google, so please use that as a great resource. We have really talented members of our community who answer questions along with the Datacratic team. So go ahead and send your questions that way. And just a reminder that the webinar will be sent to you, or the link will be sent to you, and will be available on YouTube to listen in on demand, and also available on SlideShare. So we'll send those off as soon as we put our bumpers on our webinar. Oh, one last question we've got here. Okay, last one. Is there any way RTBkit can become simpler for integration and not need so much time to integrate?
That's a great question. I think that is definitely a motivation with the plugin model. But I think that it depends on what kind of integration you're talking about. So if we're talking about integration between components, potentially this offers a simpler approach. But if we're talking about integration, for example, with exchanges for bid requests, or with ad servers for ad events, those challenges vary just depending on the interaction with the exchange, the interaction with the outside business, where those ad server events are landing. Do they need to be rewritten somewhere before they're forwarded to ad server connector? So there's a lot of there's a lot of variables there. Certainly, in our experience, integration with outside services and partners is something that can range from going relatively quickly to being painful. And the general advice is to have folks on both sides of the integration focused on it, working together in real time as needed to troubleshoot, trying to eliminate network issues or firewall or permission issues as early as possible, trying to validate any traffic flowing through as early as possible, and focusing on all of those things from a ground floor. And those things are sort of basic best practices and basic pain points that don't have that much to do with RTBkit itself. And again, I think another set of factors with bidders is things like working with our outside exchange and going through a series of latency tests with them and a series of steps with them. And those things, again, don't have much to do with RTBkit and are sort of built into the process of getting a bidder up and running and some of the integration you need to do.
And Mark, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, but the question is, do you advise to wait to develop for RTBkit 2.0 or start now?
Right. That did come up before, but that's fine. So again, I think the best answer is to not wait, because then you have your business and its goals waiting on the development of RTBkit 2.0, which certainly will take months to do and has relatively wide ambition and range. And the second reason why I would recommend not waiting is that, again, the goal is to have the 1.0 core compatible with 2.0 and be able to speak to a mix of 1.0 and 2.0 services through dependency injection and configuration. So the idea being you're not locking yourself in any way. So your 1.0 core system would still be valid. You would be able to sort of upgrade it piece by piece if you want to swap in plug-in implementations of things like, for example, logging or data or bidding agents. And you'll be able to have a mix in your system of both.
Sounds like good news. Thanks, Christy, for the question. Okay, everyone, thanks so much for taking time out of your day or night. I know we have some people who are coming from the other side of the world who are probably staying up pretty late for us today. So thank you so much for joining us. And we will send you out the link soon. And we hope to see you in the RTBkit forums as well. Talk to you soon. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.